Good afternoon, Muskegon. It's time for Torn in Two, your show for news, information, and more for this February 24th, 2023. How you doing, Ski Town? Let me get Pastor Burns in there. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm good, brother Roberts. How you doing today?
Hustling. We're on the move today, but hey,
Yes,
God
we
made
are.
things happen. How you doing? Congratulations in turn.
I'm good, my brother. How you doing?
Good, good. Well, today's is a very special show. I didn't even let you know in it. What I need you to do, people that are listening, I need you to share this, or people that are watching it on Facebook on WVSLP 103.7 The Beat or M106 Facebook site. If not, go there if you're driving. You can catch it our WVS 103.7 The Beat P YouTube site as well. I need you to share this with individuals. Pastor Melvin doesn't even know what's going to happen today, but I'm going to give you time to share it because our topic this, well, until we hopefully make an impact, we have every woman's place on next week, is domestic violence. Domestic violence is something that shows no discrimination. It hits all race, all colors, all genders.
hmm
It does not discriminate. And as we were looking for guests, what we decided to do, it was something that was on my heart, and Janae had gave me some confirmation and said maybe you should tell your story, and I said, I was thinking about that. So, Pastor Burns, you get to interview me, and I'm gonna tell my story.
Okay. First of all, brother, let me thank you because despite you being an extrovert and public person, it's not easy, and especially being a man, because men, I appreciate you would be willing to do this. You hit me cold with it, but we roll like we roll.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, some people say leave sleeping dogs where they lie. That if they know me, that's not me. What I do is I am very transparent in sharing my life story so somebody can learn.
Yeah.
So I'm an open book.
All right. Well, why don't you start off, man? Tell us the story.
Some people when they grow up, their first memories are birthday parties or Christmas or something like that.
hmm
That was not my first memories. One of my first memories was standing in the doorway on a late night, early morning with my dad. With he wore glasses,
hmm
and his glasses were off, and he had a blue jean shirt ripped, and he had blue jean pants. And my mother, whose shirt was white and green pants, short hair, and the room table turned over, and she was unconscious.
Mm.
And he was running her out, taking her to the hospital.
Wow.
That was one of my first early memories of many memories of our household. Now, for people that say, why don't you, they know my father, they know my mom, why are you doing this? Is because they would want me to.
Okay.
Because there's a good side of this story.
Okay.
I mean, it's not like
Mm.
they finished that way.
Yeah. We'll get to the end because again, and I think that's important. But so this first memory you had, did you know what had happened?
Yeah, I knew exactly what happened. I knew
Okay.
exactly what happened. That they had been in another fight.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, Pastor Burns. A lot of people say that this is what the smart people quote say. If you
Mm-hmm.
grew up in a home where there's domestic violence, if you grew up of color, if you grew up where
Hmm.
drugs are involved or alcohol, whatever, most of the chance probably you're going to end down that road.
Hmm.
That day, I remember saying in my young head,
Yeah.
I don't, I don't want to go down this road.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like this.
People don't often say, especially I think men, when it comes to male images in our life, either want to be like them or we say we don't want to be nothing like them when it comes to certain issues.
And
How old do
that,
you think you were when you had this memory, Greg?
uh, I'm thinking of probably about 5.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
so,
I mean, not to say that there were good memories in our household,
hmm,
but we'll get to that. But
yeah,
my dad was a great guy.
uh huh,
I mean, he was a job developer. He worked, helped with the Urban League.
hmm,
There are a lot of guys that come up to me today and say they wouldn't
yes,
be the man today if he wouldn't have coached them in sports. With that said, the same thing with my mom. You know, my mom was a bleeding heart. She took people in. But here's the thing that our kids, the kids have got together and talked about different points of our lives
hmm,
because there were things that we both, all of us missed.
yeah,
So what
yeah,
the oldest sister grew up
uh huh,
with having to protect us
mm,
or protecting my dad from maybe getting hot rice thrown on him,
hmm,
or my sister, Vicky, having to try to protect my mom in a different way, or protect my dad, or my sister, KK, who went through. KK and I got it the most. KK was of a different father. Of course, you know we don't have halves.
yeah, yeah,
And I was that sensitive boy.
hmm,
I wasn't that big tough boy.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I got whooped on a boat because I wouldn't touch a worm or a fish. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, you know those bounce back clowns
yeah, yeah,
that you have.
yes,
Because I wouldn't hit it, I got whooped
uh-huh,
and beat then because I wouldn't hit it.
okay,
Coming to you. This is my wife. Hello,
yeah.
wife,
Oh.
Pastor Burns.
Emily Roberts says, our pasts have been messy, but they made you the man you are today. I love you. And that's Greg Roberts. That's his wife, his wonderful, beautiful wife, Emily.
Thank you, hon. I love you too.
So let
Uh,
me ask you this, Greg. So what you're saying is, even as children, you all were involved in this whole process.
all of us, even to where on both sides, nobody was had clean hands on this.
Yeah.
My dad had a mistress that would come over to the house to antagonize my mom,
Yeah.
and there was times when my sisters would have to try to pull my mom out of the car as the woman was driving away. I mean,
Mhm.
those are things I remember late nights where there would be fights, woman on woman, as well. And these are things that, as a child, I remember vividly that happened in our household.
Yeah. So do you remember thinking this is just normal, or did you think at the time this is everybody else don't do this?
You know, for some reason, and I know what that reason is somebody was praying for me,
Yes.
that I knew that this was not normal.
Yeah.
And I knew that as I grew up, I didn't want to have any part of it.
Okay.
And thinking about it now, people say, "Would you go back and change anything?" Would you like to grow up in that environment? No, but
Yeah.
it did, as my wife said, make me into the man that I am today.
Hmm. Did people outside your household ever make comments to you about it, or ask you about it, or other family members?
No, see, because the amazing thing is that as we've been talking about these issues, is a lot of
Yeah.
family members know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
The fish fries on Friday and Aretha
Yeah.
Franklin and all that kind of stuff. They know what's going on, but it's nobody's business. What
Yeah.
happens in your house stays in your house.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
to come to find out where a lot of this was coming from, my dad and my father was born, and his mother had passed away when he was 2 months. He had never had that mother role in his family.
Mm-hmm.
My mother also had her trials and tribulations in the South, and both of them came up north. You add both components together, and they think that they know everything about getting married, but the insecurities, the things that unforgiveness, the things that they don't know.
Yeah.
When you have a pretty mother who's very attractive being chased
Mm-hmm.
and being caught, um, and having a dad the same way, it ends up with fuel in the house.
Yeah. Yeah. So was it? So did it ever reach a point when any of them, your mother or your father, got outside help or just said this is too much?
This is what happened.
Hmm.
If I'm gonna take people back,
Okay.
Dr. Bergen, the drug doctor. Uh,
Hey,
yeah, you know
we
what?
grew up here. If you grew up here, you know.
You know Dr. Bergen,
Uh-huh.
but I've got to say this about him. One thing that he did for our household, he told my mother. He said, "If you don't leave, several things are going to happen." He said,
Uh-huh.
"He's going to kill you. You're going to kill him, or something even worse is going to happen."
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was my dad was a semi-pro football player, and they had a game in Texas. And when he left, it's like a whistle blew, and anything that wasn't nailed down was packed up. And 2 days later, I found myself in Washington D.C., in the poorest part of Washington D.C.,
Mm. Wow.
and that was when I was 8.
Okay. So he was still playing then.
Yeah,
And for people that don't know, your father was a tremendous athlete,
tremendous,
celebrated
tremendous.
athlete out of high school.
Yeah, and he's semi-pro and almost went pro. Played in college as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
So so we end up in Washington D.C., and this is during Nixon and 71 in the poorest neighborhood in Washington D.C.
okay.
I remember one day being released from school, and the principal announced, "You guys are released from school. You are to run home."
Uh-huh.
And I thought that was kind of weird, so I did what the principal said.
Uh-huh.
And as I ran, we ran past the high school, and what I saw then was smoke and the high school kids. Now, I didn't put it together
Mm.
until I was old enough to know that what was happening was a protest,
Yeah.
and what that was gas.
Mm-hmm.
They were smoking out the kids, and so that was happening as I was passing along, and that was again I was 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
What happened is but let me tell you, at that time, I never, although we were in the poorest part of Washington, and you got to deal with things then because people don't know you, you got to deal with bullies and all this kind of stuff. I felt safe
Mm-hmm.
for the first time. I felt safe
Wow.
because he wasn't there. But then he found out where we were, and
Oh,
we
okay.
came home. And then I remember this at 9.
Uh-huh.
My dad saying, "Look, son, I miss you. Um, I want you. Will you come live with me?" Now, I'm 9 years old, and I'm looking at my father at my
Uh-huh.
grandmother's house above the Mason Hall, and
Uh-huh.
you have to tell somebody that you love, in spite of all that you're going through,
Yes.
and say, "No, I'm not living with you.
Yeah.
I want to live with mom."
Yes.
And I remember that, and even now that makes me teary.
Mm-hmm.
going through that experience. People, you don't know when you're going through this that there's a child watching.
Yes.
There's a child watching what you're going through while you're having these disputes,
Mm-hmm.
and they are smart enough to take in, or they're not maybe not smart enough to take in, but when they grow up, they are likely to repeat those actions.
Yes.
I was talking to a guy at our church, and he refuses to get in relationships because of his past with his dad in domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a commitment that I'm going to work with him
Yeah.
because he is really a good guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, to people that are listening, I want you to know that your kids are watching.
Yes. Yes. They watch it, and good or bad, sometimes they want to emulate what you do.
Yeah, yeah. They want to emulate what you do, and
Mm-hmm.
in my case, like I said, running away to me, in spite of,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I felt safe at
Yeah.
9 being away
Yeah.
from my
Yeah.
father.
Okay. Okay. So you decide you're not going to live with your father. How does the story progress from there?
So we moved back
Uh-huh.
to Michigan, and my father, the woman that was his mistress, he ends up marrying
Okay.
her, and she was a tough bird. Um, so when he swung, she swung back,
Okay.
and also so that hard hitting guy all of a sudden became mellow.
Okay.
But here's another thing, kids. When my dad ended up marrying his second wife and going to that town to be with those kids, then you started to feel abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
Although you went through bad experiences, not all bad, but mostly bad,
Yeah.
then you start to feel abandoned
Yeah.
because he starts to take on those kids
Uh-huh.
as as his family, and you don't hear from him.
Yeah. Do you ever remember police coming to the home?
I never remembered the police coming out to the home when I was younger, but when my mom had entered her second marriage, all hell broke loose because there was a trait with her of who she picked, and
Mm.
she always picked wrong guys.
Yeah.
So one of the guys that she picked, now I'm at the age of 15,
Mm-hmm.
was extremely abusive and stuff like that. But now I'm a bigger boy,
Yeah.
and I had uh, we like I said, my mom was a bleeding heart. We had a kid that needed a place to stay. Todd, I called him my brother. He moved in the house, and so now you got a guy trying to jump on your mother, and we ain't having it.
Right. Right.
And so the police came many, many times. Matter of
Mm.
fact, the city of Muskegon police officer, well, he called me to the side and he said this to me. He said, Greg, he said, I want you to look at yourself. And I said, yeah. And he said, if he ever tries to touch your mother again, he says, you guys just handle your business, beat the hell out of him. And
Mm.
he says, when we get here, I got your back.
Wow.
So that was kind of stuff that we're dealing with him. I mean, this guy was so off the whack. He came at us with a samurai sword, and this happened almost every night. Now imagine I'm 15. You got
Yeah.
to go to school.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're trying to play sports. You're trying to do all those things. I remember taking a trip to see my sister in Milwaukee and having to leave the trip early because I heard that he had jumped on my mom and got
Wow.
back in the Muskegon, got in the house. And this is, and I want y'all to hear what happened. and how this impact me is that I put a hole in the wall. I just punched
Mm.
a hole in the wall and said, if you touch it again, that's you.
Uh-huh.
And that's just some of the things that you remember growing up dealing with.
Yeah. So you ever spend a night at other people's houses and realize how much different it was?
You know, you spent the night at other people's houses, and now that you mentioned it, you notice that their houses were different. But remember, um, uh, to the attention, a lot of the houses I went to or spent the night to were single moms,
Okay. Okay.
so they didn't have men around.
I got you.
Or so it was like a safe zone going over to those places. And even going back to when we first moved back to Muskegon. Now my mom is divorced.
Hmm.
We're living under a roof. I mean, there's sometimes not food there. There's a lot of time between no lights, no gas, no power, no nothing. We grew up just seeing over and over bad choices that
Hmm.
mom made. But then this happened. She found out that she had a terminal disease.
Mm.
And so they decided that they're going to put her on painkillers until she passed away. She had 6 months to live. Well, 5 months come, 6 months come, 7 months come. She's still alive. Now, mind you, you're dealing with a mother that's going, I have 5 kids.
Uh-huh.
Where am I going to put them? I love them dearly. What am I
Yes.
going to do?
Uh-huh.
But now she's has prescription drugs in the thing. Well, come to find out, the the hospital here and the University of Michigan had made a mistake. Well, or I like to think it was this way: God healed her. All right,
Really?
and so now you take a woman that went from having to deal with this death sentence to now hooked on prescription
Wow.
drugs,
Man. Wow. Wow.
and that lasted all pretty much all life.
Okay. So how old were you when your mom passed?
I was 27. She was
Well, still pretty
50.
young. Still
Yeah,
pretty
she
young.
was 50. And what people don't know, all those times, like then the JCs were running for office and stuff like that, there was
Mm-hmm.
a lot of issues that we were dealing with on the side.
Mm-hmm.
With my mom, although she did struggle with her demons,
Mm-hmm.
we found out, well, we knew, but we found out that she was strong in her faith.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't know how strong she was in her faith until she passed away and we were cleaning up her remains. And she was trying to promote and invest in every ministry that she could. And
Mm-hmm.
with somebody that didn't have an income or a little income that went to the food that she could feed us, or trying to survive, she was sending money off to ministries to make ministry survive.
Yes. Yes. Wow. So it's like you knew learned a part of her life after she was gone.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
we found that
Mm-hmm.
out. The same thing years later with my grandmother, her passing away,
Uh-huh.
and we going through her stuff, we found out a lot about her life.
Okay.
But they have that saying in church that you don't know, your grandmother and your mom were praying for you.
Yes. Yes.
And certainly they were praying for me. And I had the one thing with my grandmother was that she worked at General Hospital, never missed a day, 30 some
Mm.
odd years,
Uh-huh.
never missed a day,
Uh-huh.
cleaning toilets, and just had that hard work ethic. And again, people, I want to tell you that people are watching, and I watched my grandmother and admired my grandmother because of her work ethic and how much she loved us.
Yes. Mm. And so To the outside world, everything seemed normal.
To the outside world, everything seemed great. You
There's
got this
another
guy.
happy family.
Yeah, you got this guy that was icon in sports. You have this woman that has all the looks and stuff like that, and on the outside world, everything looked great, but in the inside, it was nothing but turmoil. I can remember at about 14, there was one time where we had no lights, no gas, no water,
Hmm.
nothing. And now, remember quarter parties, Pastor Burns?
Yes, yes.
Okay. The neighbors next door, and Miss Irene, who has passed away, I love them to death. They let us run an extension cord to that house, so we
Mm.
had something.
Uh-huh.
And they let us do that for a while, and we ran that extension cord and threw a party and raised money to get everything turned back on.
Wow.
Nobody knew.
Just thought y'all was ready to party, huh?
Yeah, just everybody was ready to party.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, but it was
Uh-huh.
a old fashioned rent party,
Okay. Okay.
and that's one of the things that happened, and we got everything turned on. But it was eventually that was going to happen again. Those lights were going to get turned off, and it was just something that you live with. That was the grind of life.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. So tell me a little bit, you're a teenager, 14, 15, 16. Tell me how you emotionally respond to your mother, how you emotionally respond to your father.
1450, absolutely adored my mom.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely loved her. Knew that she went through her what she went through. Loved her. My dad, um, even then, I was shooting for. I wanted his backing. I wanted him to come to the little league games, and
Yeah.
I wanted him to be around, and he didn't come around as much. I mean, but we started to when I'm around that age.
Mm-hmm.
His house. He gave me a key and he would let me stay there and stuff like that.
Mm.
So we're starting to change that
Yeah.
bond, and that bond went from being violent to son slash
Yeah.
dad. And we started doing son slash dad
Mm-hmm.
activities. Now, was he around as much as I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
back then? No, because you want the dad at everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And
oh,
I don't want to understate how complex those emotions are. You haven't forgot the other stuff, but it's still your dad.
he's still your dad.
Yeah.
He's still and your mom, and
And people act like these things are cut and dry, and you can tell us they're not, are they?
they're not. They're not cut and dry because you're dealing with the emotions of you remember those beatings. And when I tell people beatings, I'm not talking about although we had go out and get the switch,
Yeah.
and you better not bring a switch back. It
Yeah.
better be a tree trunk.
Uh-huh.
We had those memories, but no, no. I compared it to like a Bugs Bunny cartoon. The light switch went out and you see exclamation points and
Uh-huh.
stars and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about beatings.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I had to get. And part of that was you're getting it because you're getting punished, but you're getting it because you're not being tough enough. So toughen up and take it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of men are doing that to their boys,
Yes.
and or a lot of stepfathers are trying to get control of boys or girls, and they don't even know the what's going inside that person's mind. All they understand is that kid is
Yeah.
understand that they're getting beat again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So we're coming out of teenage years. You start to become a grown man. Even as a teen, how did this affect you in terms of you dating? Build relationships with women. Did you notice an effect it had on you?
Well, to go back to what we talked about in our when we talked about molesting,
Yes.
um, at 17, dealing with a woman 24, and you think you the big, that's a big star in your chest, and you don't come back till you later. You don't realize how much that messed you up. Now,
Do you think
mind
those
you,
two were mixed in together some kind of way? I
huh?
mean, neither one of us is psychoanalysts, but do you think those was mixed in somehow with what you went through as a youth dealing with the older woman?
Well, my thing was is that at that particular time, I just wanted to be away from our house.
I got you.
I'm working
Yeah.
two jobs. One
Uh-huh.
of the jobs I'm working with my father.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm working with my father. I'm working at Myers, and I'm dealing with dating somebody else,
Yeah.
and plus I quit football, which he had a conniption
Yeah.
when I
We were
made that.
Roberts, and Roberts played football.
Yeah, yeah. When I told him I was the becoming the big red Indian, he laughed and went to, I'm gonna spring another one on you, the downtowner, and
Yeah.
drunk the afternoon away because he was so upset with his son,
Uh-huh.
and that will impact you because you think you're doing something positive and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But he didn't even ask why I didn't play football. I even tried to go back and play football, but being the coach just could not work things out.
Hmm.
But the reason I couldn't play football, like I said, the coach and I had problems. But my father never asked what was happening because if he would have asked what was going on, maybe he could have intervened.
Hmm.
But I felt like at that point, all right, I was doing something for the school, but I was letting him down.
Yeah.
So, but that changed. That
Okay.
changed because um, my brother-in-laws, the Kirksey brothers, were past Big Red Indians, and they worked with me. Now I got brother roles.
Okay.
I got mentors,
Okay.
and I put something on my Facebook page about teachers, the impact that you make. Teachers, I know y'all got a hard job, but don't speak doom over kids right now. You
Yeah.
don't know that I had a lot of teachers and a lot of principals that saw something in me that would take me out to eat or do something. And then around that age of 17, senior year, Mrs. Trump says part of your political class, you have to volunteer. And that's
Hmm.
how I got into politics. I'm running an office with a
Okay.
key. So now I'm getting responsibility. And that's how I got into politics.
Okay.
Oh, well, no, actually earlier than that, because I was helping with Mickey Knight's campaign, knocking at doors for him just to get a meal from McDonald's.
Yeah, we both did that child labor carry.
That
You know,
child labor political stuff.
knocking door to door, putting door hangers on doors, things in the. Don't put them in the mailbox. Things in the
Don't put them in the
door.
mailbox, and just but doing it back then was just to get a meal.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
And then, with the city of Muskegon, that's why I'm so adamant about the city of Muskegon and not having a leisure service department and not being able to feed kids at parks
Yeah.
because that was our only meals going in the summertime,
Uh huh.
going from the park to park to park. On top of, you dealing with hunger, you're dealing with, I got to go home and I'm going to strangle this guy if he touches my mom.
Uh huh.
And which was almost guaranteed when you got home that was happening.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So you become a late teen, early adult, and you just want to be out of the house.
You just want to be out of the house. And the one time that I felt that I really let my mom down
Hmm.
was when I'm like in my mid 20s and she's getting evicted out of a household.
Okay.
And she called, it's like the one and only time that she called me and to say that she needed help. And she's like, needed help moving some stuff out. And I was like, Mom, they're evicting you. Just leave the stuff there. It's just junk. And
Hmm.
it's like that one deep time that she called and asked you for a favor
Yeah. Yeah.
and you didn't do it.
So we're from the era where mothers didn't ask kids for help much.
Right, right.
Yeah,
And she
yeah.
she did and I didn't. And that I
Hmm.
felt really felt bad about that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she gets kicked out. She gets moved to an apartment. I moved. I'm finally out free. Started working for the state of Michigan, but still dealing with those phone calls. I got a little sister at home.
Yeah.
Still
Okay.
dealing with those occasional phone calls that something's going on. Then you got to run over and deal with. Okay, what's going on today with domestic violence?
Yeah. Do you, not to speak for your siblings, but was it kind of all the same with the siblings as they couldn't wait to get out and get away from it?
Well, yeah, all the siblings. And it's funny. I was thinking about writing a book. One situation, five pair of eyes, deflecting just to tell people that we had five kids in there, and all five saw five different situations.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the oldest one had to be the protector of us, and had to be the protector of to break up mom and dad from fighting. Vicky had to do the same thing, but also now you have a woman coming in, and so now they're starting to try to stop my mom from killing her.
Hmm.
KK's dealing with being a child whose dad lived in Grand Rapids. They're well off, and so she gets clothes and stuff like that. But she's not able to bring clothes into that our household because none of the other kids have the clothes that they could afford in Grand Rapids. So you got that fight, that mentality that was going on as well as a young age, and then you have my youngest sister that had to deal with all of us gone on our career paths, and she's there with mom, who's hooked on drugs, dealing with a crazed man,
Hmm.
and we're gone.
So you left the baby sister there by herself.
So yeah, and so we as a family um, have we get together and make Zoom calls and stuff
Yeah.
like that and
Yeah.
talk this stuff out because
Yes.
we don't in we you don't understand when you have generations like that what one person might go through,
Yes.
what you might go through, and then if you got young people in,
Hmm.
my sister ended up telling me, my youngest sister ended up telling me one time that they were alone by herself and mom was just in the bed, just drugged out, and the refrigerator was freezer was froze, and
Mm.
she didn't know how to unthaw it, so she took a hammer to it and tried to break the ice and broke it, and so they don't have a refrigerator freezer for years. I mean, for a while.
Mm. Wow.
I didn't even know that story until 2 years ago.
Wow. Wow. So,
And I want to tell people when you go through domestic violence and stuff like that, I can't help to say it again. My sister, the youngest sister, told me when she went off to college, how she went out with a fraternity guy and a football player and
uh-huh.
ended up being raped.
Uh-huh.
I just found that out a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
she's dealing with the guilt of that,
Hmm.
which goes into her first marriage. She gets married young because
Hmm.
she just wants that happy marriage,
Yes.
that happy ending, and
Hmm.
she ended up getting divorced right away. So you
Hmm.
don't know how this stuff impacts your
Right.
family, and
Yeah.
it impacted all five of us.
Mm. So do you, was there a point you had a conversation with your mother about this violence that you grew up in?
Me and my mom never had a chance to have that talk
Hmm.
because my mom did end up finding a good guy.
Okay.
And this good guy did everything he could to get her off prescription drugs, to make sure that the family had something to eat.
Yes.
And so she ended up finding a good guy, which that was so new to us that we didn't even know that existed.
Okay.
And but there was a good man that did a lot for us, and even pulling me to the side and saying, "Hey, this is how you make beef stew and all this kind of stuff." And you can remember that stuff very vividly.
Yes. Yes. Kindness is very memorable, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So, your father, did you all ever have any conversations about this? Any reconciliation?
Now we get to where there's uh, the story changes.
Yes.
I told you my mom died when I was 27. We have, even then, in spite of Pastor Burns,
Hmm.
all the stuff that I told you, we had, look, it may not be nothing to eat, but you're going to have a clean home. It might be
Yeah.
rats and roaches and
Uh huh.
all that kind of stuff, but you're going to do your chores.
Yes.
And we had 5 rules. I mean, one of the rules were if it was 1 degree, you go into school. If it's 0, you stay home.
Okay.
So you had rules.
Yes.
Um, but at one of the rules that we still have in our family today that we pass down, when somebody passes, there's a pecking order of what is done.
Okay.
For instance, the oldest male has a responsibility, several responsibilities that he's supposed to do until the next oldest male comes in.
Okay.
So I called my dad and said, "You look, you need to get up here. Mom's dying." Um, he gets up. He gets up here just in time to see her before she passed. That night, we go to. I'm gonna throw another one at you, J.P.
Okay.
Allen's. So we go to J.P. Allen's, and this is the first time I see my dad with his head hung,
Mm.
and he's like crying, and this is the first time that I get a chance to see him emotional.
Hmm.
So the next day, I said, "Look, Dad, you're in town. This is what I did. Okay, we rented the Mason Hall. I did this and did this. Okay, you take over." And he said, "Son," he said, "you've done a great job." He said, "Continue doing what you do."
Mm.
So after Mom passed away, and I said, "Dad, look, I got a question for you." I said, "Why did you and Mom fight, and why did you guys have the problems that you did?" And he said, "Son, it doesn't make it right." He says, "But let me explain why."
Hmm.
What I didn't know is when we were going to the Getty Drive-In with my mom and my aunts,
Uh huh.
Mom was busy in other activities.
Really?
Yeah, my dad was extremely jealous.
Hmm.
So what he did was she wasn't allowed out of the house.
Mm.
But he paid the bills. He went to the PTA meetings. He
Oh
went to the
wow.
doctor's meetings.
Wow.
She, unless she was with him. But what he said was is that being other than being out there, um, and being pretty, one of the other things was is that, and this is the money in. What he would do is he would get paid his money from his job. Then he would leave. He would give the money to my mom to pay bills, and he would take $5, and he would take that $5 and he would go gamble to try to raise more money
Mm.
to get in the household.
Okay.
And I always wondered why we shopped. I got another one I'm gonna drop at you, at the Spartan store on let me see, on Sherman in Henry.
So, okay. Yep. Yep. Yep.
Okay, back in the old days when Nev was there,
Yep.
and he said the reason why he shopped there because the man gave him credit,
Okay.
and the guy said, "We're as long as you pay me back, I will be able to. You can shop there." So although they were fighting, there was food in the house,
I got you.
and so we began to talk and talk and talk, and now here's the good side of the story. Remember, I said that there's a good side to all this. My
Yes.
father and I ended up working things out, talking things out. That's why when people say I'll never talk to my parent again,
Yeah.
no, don't do that. You'll miss out something. He ended up being my best man in my wedding.
Mm-hmm.
being my a great father, grandfather, and I was there. Me and my wife were there to watch him take his last breath. So
Mm-hmm.
we had a great relationship at the end. I was there when he became a deacon at his church.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I would have missed that if I would have stayed
Yes.
away or if I would have been bitter for what he did. Because there's part of his DNA. Well, I inherited his DNA, but there was
Yes.
some things like him coaching.
Yes.
I coached for 30 some odd years.
Yes.
Him being a job developer and being an activist for the community,
Yes.
I've done that and still try to. I was a job developer and still try to be a community activist. So
Mm-hmm.
there was not all bad with them.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so him and I were able to talk. We were able to work things out. And the good side of that, like I said, he was able. We were able to come to agreement. And like I said, he was the best man in my wedding.
Yeah.
And he was also, like I said, I was there to watch him take his last
Yeah.
breath.
Yeah. Now, people that watch the program are aware that you and I are both involved in ministry.
Right.
And like most things, we don't just minister from books, but we minister from things we've lived in our life.
Hmm.
And so we know there's a psychology out there that we don't always buy into about abuse and some of these things, but it's like anything, and I'm not preaching, but it's like anything else that we put in that category of bad or sin or wrong. That
Hmm.
there has to be a path of forgiveness.
It must. It
Has to be,
must because
and again, we're just putting this out there for our artists. We talking about abuse, and it's horrible, it's disgusting, but there has to be a path because the forgiveness wasn't just for your dad; it was for you too.
you're correct.
So talk about that a little bit.
Well, not only the forgiveness is for my dad and I. How about the unforgiveness that I had for a long time?
Yes.
Thinking that maybe it was my fault for not being
Mm,
that tough football player, or
yes.
maybe that would have made things a little different.
I'm sure you always think that there was something you guys could have done to
It's,
change things.
yeah, I talked to all the kids, and
Yes.
all of us went through that.
Mm-hmm.
And in spite of, and what I want to tell people is that if forgiveness is like unforgiveness is like you drinking the poison and wishing that the other person die.
Yes.
You have to forgive that person so you can move on with your life.
Yes.
And the thing is that I was able to forgive him. I was definitely able to forgive myself and able to say what I saw in that marriage and what I saw with both my mom and dad. I saw the bad that will never enter my marriage.
Yes.
I won't that, but I saw the good and I said, that's what, and there was good. I mean, like we had with my family, with my dad, with taking the family to go get Christmas trees, like Christmas trees. We do that with my
Yes.
family,
Yes.
and
Yes.
now they do that with their families.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have that forgiveness,
Yes.
you will miss out on a relationship.
Yes.
And the thing is, if you don't have, be ready to ask the tough questions. Don't be afraid to ask the tough
Yes.
questions.
Yes.
Because if I wouldn't have asked my dad why, although it didn't necessarily make it right, did it put him in a mind frame that I could, okay, let's move on.
Yes.
And so, if people, if you're out there and you have hurt, and you need to hear me. If you have hurt concerning a parent in your past, and you say you're never going to forgive them, please rethink your thinking, because it takes more energy to sit up there and hold on to that hurt than it takes to forgive and to move on.
Yes.
And I was able to move on, and we were able to have a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me generationally. You mean you have your father, grandfather, your kids didn't grow up the man that you grew up with. Your kids don't grow up with that same man. How much of
Well,
the story do you share with them? How much do you put in context for them?
well, what we did, like I said, I'm transparent. My kids knew my situation.
Okay.
It was very important that they knew where their dad came from
Yeah.
and what made their dad tick.
Yeah.
And so they did get a chance to meet him. They did get the chance to meet Grandpa and Papa.
Uh-huh.
So they got a chance to meet him, but he was a different person.
Yes.
He had changed. Like I said, he was the deacon. He had faith in God, and so they did. He was able to come around and be in their lives.
Hmm.
But if I would have held on to that unforgiveness and say no, you can't be around them, they would have missed out on that. It was important for me for to have that they have him in their lives.
Yes. Yeah. So, what do you know? What changed the corner? We say, God, was there an event or something specific that sort of make the light, and made him realize his life needed to be different?
Well, the first thing was is that he found a woman that would fight back.
Let's see. Yeah, that'll
But
do
that was the one of the changes. But the other thing was is that maturity, age, and growing up.
it. Yeah.
As he grew older, he started to realize things. And then as he became involved in God and becoming a deacon, that just really changed his life.
Yes.
And he ended up in getting married for his third time, and he was much more mellow. Um,
Hmm.
um, but the marriage didn't. It ended not so well, and
Hmm.
he was, and that was the chance for me to see again my dad hurt to the core.
Mm. Mm. Okay. Okay. Well, man, tell you this. It's amazing that you share this story. Again, I know it's not easy. And I think you and your siblings have hopefully for our listeners, I've taught them a lesson just about how you guys have support, encourage each other, and just been able, I don't know. I don't know if any of your siblings are in the professions of counseling, but you guys have put in the work
The,
to do better.
Let me give you one of the things that my dad asked me to do is that when he passed away, he wanted me
Mhm.
to do the eulogy.
Okay.
And talking to the family said, Greg, that would be too hard for you.
Mm-hmm.
But they said, would you still speak for the family? And I said, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So in doing my math and doing some history on my dad, out of 9 kids that he was involved with,
Mm-hmm.
all 9 kids end up either college bound, owned a business, or were successful in some kind of way. Every one of them.
Mm-hmm.
No jail time, no prison time, nothing for none of the kids. Now, remember what we've been through.
Right. Right.
So out of all 9 kids, no jail time, no prison time, no craziness. Then out of the 9, add the grandkids, so we're up to 18. No
Okay.
jail time, no prison time, um, college bound, professional, or in a craft, and then take the kids after that, the same number. So look at the impact of the man. If I would have stayed away, we could have missed that. But like I said, the story had a good ending because he did make a positive impact on people.
Yes.
And look at all the kids, even today, everyone is doing well,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to give credit where credit is due. I
Yes.
thank God for everything, but God changed him to
Yes.
be able to touch 9, which to touch their grandkids and the great
Mhm.
grandkids.
Yeah. And now you started off early on when we had this discussion. You talked about a guy you're talking with the church about dealing with abuse, but We go through these experiences in life, and after we get through them, you and I both believe you have an obligation to help other people. Talk about that a little bit.
It's a must for me.
Hmm.
It's a must for me because um, doing the show and like telling the story, it's a must for me to tell people we're not perfect people. We make mistakes. You can. A lot of people that go through this, they feel that they can't be in a relationship because what they saw, they don't want to do themselves.
Yes, yes,
And then you have to talk and do counseling and stuff like that. And the importance of mentorship and importance of partnering up with people is, it, to me, it's a must for me. And so anytime I find somebody that grew up like I did, it's a must that I get involved. Even in coaching, when there would be kids that would not want to go home, for instance, if practice end at 5,
uh-huh.
and the kid just wanted to bowl off or run off or do something to get that frustration off. I remember there was a girl that I taught that she was kicked out of her house. She didn't even
Hmm.
have a. She was afraid to tell me, but she told me. We stayed there. My wife and I stayed there. She couldn't even get a uniform from her dad.
Yeah,
And so that was a phone call for me to talk to the dad so she can get a uniform and stuff like that. So to me, it is so important that if you have been in situations like that, and I tell people, if you grew up like that, don't hide that from your children.
yes,
Be transparent with your children so your children can kind of understand how you tick.
yes,
And if you see any traits with them where they may need some help, get them help. Get them the help. We have talked to you about the Child Abuse Council. Women there, or even men. There are places, if you are beat up or don't feel safe, get out, get to a place where you feel safe and where you can start the healing process immediately. Because if you don't, you will stay in that bad trait.
yeah. Having been divorced, it's like I have this thing where I can see through behaviors and words people say to where they are. You put a lot of time around kids and coaching. Is you feel like you almost have a radar or sense for when kids are talking about these things, but you kind of pick up what's maybe going on at home.
Yeah. Yeah. The discernment
Yeah.
that God gives us, you can look at people. I on every fourth Thursday, I'm in the prison preaching and teaching,
Yes.
and you can see guys that don't forgive themselves,
Hmm.
low self esteem, grew up the same way that you did, and you are. I feel that I have to try to talk to each individual, um, no matter what it takes. You got to reach out and touch those people.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Well, look here, brother. I know we're coming up on the end of our time here. Again, I want to thank you for sharing your story. We've been on the subject about abuse, and we aren't just talking about it. You've talked about how you lived it, and I want to thank you. I want to thank your siblings for working through this and being an example for people that are listening. And it's been tremendous, and I appreciate you being willing to share that. Why don't you go ahead and give us some final words before you close us out here?
If you're going through domestic violence, I want to tell you that you can make it out of that situation. You have to make that first step. If you don't feel safe, get out. Don't worry about money. Don't worry about that. Get out. And then get the help that you need. Number two, know that what you're doing right now is affecting your kids. So if you into a relationship where you think you can fix a person while you're sitting up there still getting beat, no, don't do that. Get out. This is affecting our generation right now, and between COVID and all this other stuff, people being home, a lot of kids are hurting and they're just taking it out at school and on each other. It's an imperative that we get involved in people's lives right now, or people are going to continue with this generation. You can survive this, and you can train your kids to survive, and they can move on. Or you can let them hold on to bitterness and miss out on some relationships.
Yeah,
Pastor Burns, I know I sprung this on you, but I wanted this to be real and legit.
I hear you.
And I wanted you to throw every question. I appreciate you. Hey, that's the end of the show 301. Every Woman's Place is next week. Again, if you're in the domestic violence, get out and be safe. Go sow a seed in somebody's life. You never know who you're going to touch. Take care and God bless.
God bless you.